This is probably a really weird video for me to be making at this time in my channel, because I took a month break and coming back, I have a lot of different ideas for different videos. But for me to start off with this one is kind of odd. That being showing off my Funko Pops. The reason why is because it's something that people can enjoy, but also because I am really scared of my setup being really bad, or my microphone not sounding that well, or just different feedback from people that are not receiving this new whole editing idea and setup as well as I hope they will. Therefore, this video is not very important. It is something that you can enjoy, and I very much enjoyed making it, but you don't have to watch it in order to like my channel. It's very much something that is very self-contained, as it's not a full-on whole research video on different characters and stuff. It's instead me just talking about the Funkos I personally have. It's something that I think some people might enjoy, but it's not very important for me to have all this research and waste time of my life on a video that might not get received well because of my new setup, which I very much am afraid that people won't like. So if you like it, please tell me, because I took a long time to set it up. In fact, it took me about 3 days to do it. And trying out different editing techniques, which also I'm experimenting with, and I don't want to do that with a video that is important to me, like the Spider-Man Sister video that is coming up soon, which should be out in a few weeks. Also, I was very worried about how I was going to present the Funkos in this video. Was I going to actually take photos of my actual Funkos and show them in the video? Or was I going to take off the internet photos of the Funkos I own because they're more professionally photographed? Well, I myself have very, very poor photography skills, which you probably can already tell from this very just still photo. Which is here to show that I very much own all these Funko Pops, but I will not be taking photos of them individually for when I talk about them individually. Instead, I'll be using photos off the internet because, well, I think they're better to look at than my poor photography skills. Also, the really crappy lighting in my room and the fact my room is really messy. I don't want to get canceled for how messy my room is. Which might sound ridiculous, but trust me, it's so messy I would not be surprised if I got canceled for it. So let's begin. And first, the Funko Pop I want to talk about most is actually a pretty basic one, but it is definitely my favorite. And that is Batman from the Super Friends show. The reason why it's my favorite is because just how basic it is, which ironically is probably the reason why a lot of people don't like it. It is a very classic look for Batman, which is one of my favorite looks. Now, a lot of people like him in all black, however, I personally am a sucker for the blue and gray. The Super Friends show is very campy, and this version of Batman is an idol of campiness, as well as the 60s Batman show version of the character. This Funko Pop actually came with a Hall of Justice, which also is from the Super Friends show. Another personal favorite part of DC lore I love, that comes from a different media. As well, yes, I love the Watchtower. I also really like the Hall of Justice. The idea of the Super Friends or Justice League having a headquarters on Earth that is just like a full-on monument is, in my opinion, a very interesting idea. Which, yes, is not used for a serious discussion of superheroes and how they're viewed by society in the show. It is obviously not. But it's used for a campy reason, and in my personal opinion, it works very well. Both for a serious possibility as to why it exists, but also because it is campy, and I just love it. The next character I want to talk about in this video, which, by the way, will not be the only video I'll be making on my Funko Pops, because I just have too many. I can't make just one video on them, because it would be a very, very long video, up to probably an hour or two. But next, for this video, I want to talk about Batwoman, aka Ryan Wilder. A Funko Pop that is probably very controversial considering the fact that Ryan Wilder as a character was very much hated on. However, I personally actually like the character, and I got the Funko Pop off Amazon for only $16, which is kind of a bargain. She is actually one of my newest Funko Pops, and personally, she's already became one of my favorite. As while I will admit, the look doesn't really work that often in live action, even when there are occasions where I think it really does. I think it works very well for a Funko Pop, which is maybe a compliment, maybe it's not one, I don't know, but I really like it. Also because it's a Funko Pop and it's not a part of the actual show, you can actually see the highlights of the red hair in the character's costume. As well on the show, sometimes you really couldn't see it because it was in the dark. And also, sometimes it would look like it's only one red streak and it's just random. Well, in the Funko Pop, it makes a lot more sense and it's a fade in the back, making it work far more in my opinion. However, yet again, just my opinion, I know people really dislike the character, and the fact I even included her in this whole haul is probably controversial in itself. But I really wanted to talk about it because it is one of my favorites. Now the first MCU character on my list is Adam Warlock, who in the MCU is, in my opinion, one of the most visually stunning characters in the entirety of the MCU, and he's a pretty new one too. Now on the comics, I've always liked the character, but in the MCU, they made him more gold than yellow, which really spoke to me. I don't know why, it just did, and it really just made me want the character in a Funko Pop. My sister actually gave me him for a birthday present a few weeks ago, and it's quickly become one of my favorite Funko Pops of my collection because, well, it's just really cool looking. It's very shiny. I am so professional, I'm talking about how shiny things are. But it's true, it's a very big reason as to why I really like Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock as a character has always been a character that I, while enjoyed, I haven't really loved. He's not a character that I pick up a comic just for. He's a character that, if he's in a comic, I definitely will read it, and I will likely enjoy him. But he's not the character I'm really just rooting for. But I have to admit, his look has always been very stunning to me, and to have him be more gold and shiny really made him pop to me, which is why I wanted a Funko Pop of him, and it's why I have him on my shelf now. He's just so shiny. Even the red on his costume is so shiny. I'm like a little kid talking about the rock collection they have in their frickin' pocket. It's a shiny rock. I like it because it's shiny. Yeah, I know, stupid joke. Next is Spider-Woman from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, who is a character in the comics I've always loved, and I really like her in the movie as well, which is why I got the Funko Pop of her. I got this from GameStop a few weeks ago, and from my knowledge, it is the first pregnant Funko Pop. That is a really odd sentence. As much as I know, I could be wrong, but while looking for pregnant Funko Pops, it was the only one I could find. Is that one of the weirdest things that I've ever said on my channel? Probably not, unfortunately, but it's probably at least in the top 20. Now, the look for the character in the movie was, in my opinion, a very stunning look. It is very different than the character in the comics, even down to having the character race swapped, but I still really enjoyed the character. I think the look very much fits with the character's aesthetic from the comics, even though it's different. They got rid of the yellow almost entirely. I said almost entirely. Except for earrings, which, by the way, just look like something that people can just, like, yank in the middle of a fight. That seems like a hazard to have. Although, yet again, she's fighting pregnant, so I guess that's also a hazard to have. Regardless, this character in the comics and in the movie is just a character I really like, and I really, really wanted the Funko Pop of the character. I might get her comic book counterpart also as a Funko Pop, too. I've seen it on Amazon, but I don't know yet. As of right now, I think this character is very much one of my favorite Funkos. And I think my only slight issue is the fact that the character is somewhat crouching, which makes her very short when I'm trying to put her on my shelf. Therefore, I had to put her in the front instead of the back, because if she's in the back, she won't be seen. But that's just a very small nitpick, and I don't think anyone else cares except for me, because I put them in a shelf behind each other while other people put them in rows. Next is Nightcrawler, that being the X2 version of the character, who, weirdly enough, is not my favorite version of Nightcrawler. Not even close. But yet he's on this list because I just love Nightcrawler in general. Therefore, I'm kind of biased, but I added him to the list of my favorites. The version of Nightcrawler in the movie, personally, I think was wasted. But I did like the detail of the tattoos to his skin. As when the comics is just blue, I like the idea that there's more detail in the fact that he's not just blue, but he has these scar type of tattoos. similar to how they gave Mystique scales. Nightcrawler in this movie also did not get his costume to the comics, which I think is kind of a loss. However, yet again, most of the X-Men didn't get their costume to the comics, which also is a loss. Similar to Spider-Woman, he also is kind of crouched, therefore he has to be further up in the front of my Funkos because, well, if he's not, he won't be seen. But regardless of that, he still is one of my favorites because I just love Nightcrawler so much, and he's the only version of Nightcrawler that I do own. And I think if I had a different version of the character, possibly his comic book counterpart, I likely wouldn't have him on this list as one of my favorites because, well, he technically isn't. Nightcrawler himself just is my favorite character. But this version of the character is not. Next is probably the most random Funko, or at least one of the most random Funkos, and that is Ursula from the 2023 film The Little Mermaid. Which is very off-brand for me, considering the fact that all my other Funkos, except for another one, are all superheroes, or supervillains. But Ursula is the only Disney villain that I have on my shelf, and that's because she's actually my favorite Disney villain, as well as Captain Hook and Mother Gothel. Now, a lot of people have hated on the Little Mermaid 2023 movie. However, personally, I did enjoy it. In fact, I think I liked it more than the original. I'm going to get canceled for that, aren't I? And the reason why I like this Funko so much is the fact that it has a flat bottom of her tentacles. Therefore, it actually stands up very, very easily and never falls. Which might sound weird, but trust me, some Funkos fall very easily. Both Namor and Mera fall very easily. Who also, ironically, are from the sea. So Ursula is the best sea creature on my shelf, technically, then, because she never falls like them. Also, I just generally really like the design and the idea of a sea witch I always have from even when I was little. I just think it's really cool. Next is my first and only giant Funko, that being Thanos from the MCU, which is my favorite MCU villain. I think it's a lot of people's favorite MCU villain. However, this Funko is my only giant one, and is, in my personal opinion, very, very cool. Not just because he is giant, but because he just generally has a very strong design. Also because he's so big, I usually put him in the back of my Funkos when I sort them out, therefore he's very visible. And his sinister smile is genuinely kind of nerve-wracking, even though it's a Funko. Then is a 3-in-1, which is a Pride collection of DC characters. Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, and Robin. Robin here, ironically, seems to be Dick Grayson and not Tim Drake, as the design seems more based on the Batman the Animated Series version of Robin, who was Dick Grayson. Although in all fairness, both Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy also seem to be based on the Batman the Animated Series designs. However, I would have chosen the Tim Drake version for the new Batman Adventures for Robin in this set, due to the fact that Tim Drake is actually bisexual. While having Dick Grayson here is a little odd to me, due to him being straight. There is also some criticism towards this set of characters due to the fact that all three of them are bisexual, therefore none of them are gay, or pan, or lesbian. And I've seen some complaints saying that this should be called Bisexual Pride instead of just Pride. I myself am bisexual, so therefore I could be biased. Although that is with the idea of that this Robin is supposedly Tim Drake, when it very clearly isn't. Despite the fact that it's really weirdly labeled as Tim Drake on multiple forums, I'm very confused. Who's this meant to be? But regardless of all of that, I personally think this set is very, very cool because of the fact that it very shows initiative in the idea of pride. And Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn being picked makes a lot of sense because they are one of the first DC bisexual couples. Robin being there, like I said, is a little confusing considering the fact that it clearly is based on Dick Grayson's design, yet it's trying to imply it's Tim Drake. Therefore, I'm gonna say it's Tim Drake and say they're all bisexual. However, if it's Dick Grayson, it makes no sense to have him in the set since he's straight. Like said, it would have made a lot more sense if they just used the new Batman Adventures design of Tim Drake. Just saying. I also got this set off Amazon for about, I think, $22, which is a pretty big steal for 3 Funkos. And the final Funko I want to talk about is probably the most random, even more random than Ursula, and that is I Love Lucy's Lucy Ricardo, which you probably don't even know who that is. But she's the main character played by Lucille Ball on I Love Lucy, which was a TV show from the 50s. A sitcom that very much was revolutionary to the idea of sitcoms, reruns, as well as having a female lead, which was never heard or done before. And having a Hispanic male lead, which was also never done before. As well as alluding to a gay couple, which also was very much never done before. Although it wasn't actually a gay couple, it was like one of those Chandler and Joey things from Friends. It was between Lucy and Ethel, where it was like kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it was pretty obvious what was being implied. That was when Lucy found out she was pregnant and how they're talking about having a baby, and they were talking about it as if it was their baby. Now, the reason why I had this Funko was because I Love Lucy was a very big part of my childhood. And no, I'm not from the 50s, I'm only 18, but my family had bought all the DVDs, and I would watch it all the time. It was a fairly funny sitcom, and a sitcom that I myself, when I was like 6, could enjoy. The jokes didn't go over my head because they weren't inappropriate or very complex, but they were also really funny even as I got older. I went to the Lucy Museum in Jamestown with my mom, and I found this Funko-Pop of Lucy. And it's actually really, really rare, so I'm fairly lucky. There's also different Funko-Pops of I Love Lucy characters on Amazon I found, but they're really expensive. There's Ricardo, there's a black and white Lucy, and I'm pretty sure I saw an Ethel as well. This Lucy is of her working at the chocolate factory when she messes up with Ethel, from the episode Job Switch. And by the way, I'm remembering all of this from my head. Just the top of my head. I did not research any of that, I just remember it. That's because I have watched this series likely like 10 times. As in the entire series. Which kind of seems a little random for a comic book channel to be discussing. But this is my Funko collection, and even though it does have a lot of superhero different type characters, supervillains, supporting characters, variations of superheroes, at the end of the day, it is still my collection, and it's things that I personally like. Which does include Disney villains like Ursula, or okay, only one Disney villain like Ursula, and Lucy from I Love Lucy, because how much of an impact that had on my childhood. Which, by the way, had a crossover with Superman. Yeah, had a Superman crossover. And when I say that, I don't mean the actor Superman. I mean it actually had Superman appear on the show. They had purposely made it very obvious that the character had his own show in this universe. However, they made it pretty tongue-in-cheek that it's an actor, and that he actually is Superman. This was because they did not want to kill the dreams for young kids that Superman didn't exist. So instead, they had actual Superman guest star on the show. I made a video about that a long time ago. If you want to go watch it, I will leave a link down below. But that's the end of this video. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!